I read once, passingly, about a man named Shakespeare. I only read about him passingly, but I remember one thing he wrote that kind of moved me. He put it in the mouth of Hamlet, I think it was, who said, "To be or not to be." He was in doubt about something. Whether it was nobler in the mind of man to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, moderation, or to take up arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. And I go for that. If you take up arms, you'll end it. But if you sit around and wait for the one who's in power to make up his mind that he should end it, you'll be waiting a long time. And in my opinion, the young generation of whites, blacks, browns, whatever else there is, you're living at a time of extremism, a time of revolution, a time when there's got to be a change. People in power have misused it, and now there has to be a change, and a better world has to be built, and the only way it's going to be built is with extreme methods. And I, for one, will join in with anyone, don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. Thank you.
Malcolm was always involved somewhere in the struggle.
Get uptown.
No, run the other roll in, please. Boys and Girls Club.
Just a little piece of paper. But this card from the Boys and Girls Clubs has kept millions of young people off drugs, out of gangs, and in school. Little piece of paper. It's only a little piece of paper. It tells every kid who carries it that someone cares about how they grow up and what they do with their lives. Every day, another 300 kids will join the club. That's 300 kids who will be picking up a membership card instead of a gun or a needle or a knife. It's amazing, isn't it? Even still, there are thousands more children who need our help. You know, too many people feel like they can't make a difference, but I'm telling you this. Put this card in the hands of a child, and you will change that child's life. Do that, and you can change the world. It's up to us. Support a program that works. The Boys and Girls Clubs, the positive place for kids.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. As you see, that's the Boys and Girls Club of Harlem, and that's a pet project of mine. Reverend Grant kept that alive for so many years, but we have Shirley Lewis, the chairperson of the board, that's kept it alive and done magnificent work with it. And you'll see a lot of progress on that building on 145th Street. And today we have Joe Rogers Jr., ex-member of Community Board 9. And he's here also a member of Convent Avenue Baptist Church. And so he's going to get involved with the Boys and Girls Club, and I have him on the show today. All right. Plus he has a program going with literacy in Harlem.
Absolutely.
Tell us about it, Joe.
Absolutely, my pleasure, and thanks so much for having me on. It's good to be on here for the first time. Literacy Across Harlem is a program that got its legs many years ago. It started out as a personal initiative. So 6 or 7 years ago, I realized that as a black man, as a man of color living in Harlem, that I had a responsibility to serve as a role model, especially for our young brothers coming up.
Amen.
And so I began carrying a book outside of my bag wherever I went because I wanted them to see a man who looks like many of them carrying around reading material. And at that point, it was a very simple concept, right? One person trying to make a difference. We realized later on that, one person, as much as I love, folks looking at me and maybe seeing me as a role model, me doing that wasn't going to be enough. So I started thinking, what can I do to engage more Harlemites in this effort?
Amen.
And building on the ongoing work that other folks are doing. This wasn't, this isn't revolutionary necessarily. Other folks are doing great work. So a few years ago, I had the idea to do a march across Harlem for literacy.
Beautiful.
And we actually were able to do that July 21st. I approached Max Rodriguez, the founder of the Harlem Book Fair. It's a 14-year institution now. I sat down, pitched the idea to him, and his eyes got bright, and he was very excited. He thought it would bring something valuable to what he's already doing, which is a wonderful, wonderful program, wonderful bunch of programs he's running. And so, July 21st, we got together with the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, all 8 public libraries across Harlem, literacy programs, including the Harlem YMCA's Literacy Zone, which offers adult basic education, GED prep, English as a second language, and family literacy programs, as well as our independent libraries across the village.
Beautiful.
So U-Man Bookstore, unfortunately, the physical location has closed in Central Harlem, but we also have La Casa Azul bookstore at Lexington and 103rd Street. We have, as you know very well, Sisters Uptown Bookstore Cultural Center, 157th in Amsterdam. So this is really a community-wide effort. Total Equity Now, the organization that I founded, provided some initial energy, a spark, if you will, but it's really about building on the existing work, connecting the dots. And then we marched across Harlem. We marched to the center of the Harlem Book Fair, the main stage, and we placed our donated books, right? Everyone marched in one hand with their favorite book, in the other hand with a book to donate to the Harlem YMCA's Literacy Zone programs and other literacy programs around our community. There's Literacy Push at Oberia Dempsey Center. We stacked them high. We got other donations. We ended up with over 1,000 books donated by Harlem community members and community businesses, including Miss Marva Allen of U-Man Bookstore. So this was very simple, right? It's about leveraging the wonderful potential and efforts and resources of our community coming together for something positive to raise the awareness about literacy and also provide a tangible benefit to folks in our community who are trying to improve their skills.
That's definitely an asset to the Boys and Girls Club of Harlem.
Yeah, I pitched it to the executive director, and she was excited about it as well.
Great,
so,
great.
So just building on that, we realized that one initiative a year isn't going to do it. Just as one person, right, or several people walking around carrying books isn't going to make a huge difference. We realized we needed to engage even more of the village. So we came up with this idea to do a monthly initiative. The first day of every month we've declared to be Literacy Across Harlem Day. That's a day in which we're asking all Harlemites, east to west, north to south, younger to older, to carry reading materials outside of their bags. It could be a book, it could be a magazine, it could be an e-reader, it could be a newspaper. It doesn't matter. We're not judging, right, what kind of literacy material you choose to carry. We're just asking folks to carry it, so we build a critical mass of what we're calling Harlem Literacy Ambassadors. And those are folks who participate in this first of every month effort and who agree to spread the word to their neighbors so that more of our young people and more of the adults in our community see us celebrating our identity as readers.
What about students or people? We just had a young man on our show, Gardner. Ivy Key program, tutoring program.
Yep.
And people need to learn how to read. There's a lot of probably grown people, folks out here that can't read properly.
We know that.
Do you have any programs for that?
Absolutely, and I don't personally run them. We have a number of programs I'm happy to talk about if we have time. But what we're trying to do is connect folks to the existing programs in our community who are doing wonderful work. So a quick shout out to Talia, Abraham, to Rita, and Miss Tiffany at the Harlem YMCA's Literacy Zone program, because they have those types of programs. And they're actually enrolling. They have open enrollment for this programs next week. So they're enrolling for recent immigrants, English as a second language, adult basic education for folks who may have slipped through the cracks early on, want to come back and improve their reading and writing, GED prep, and family literacy for our parents who want to better support their young folks' literacy development. So the same thing we have at Oberia Dempsey, 127th Street, between Adam Clayton Powell and Lennox. They have programs there where they're working with a network of literacy service providers providing a similar range of services. So we are doing this work. This work is being done in the community.
But people just don't know about it.
There you go. We have to spread the word. And so that's why I'm happy to be on here and help connect some of the dots and work with some of these wonderful partners in our community, like our bookstores. Right? Books La Casa Azul, again, mostly Latino bookstore, 103rd in Lexington, 103rd between Lexington and Park. They have programs almost every day of the week. They have author visits where they're doing book signings and readings. They have programs for young people, for little kids, older kids. The same thing with Sisters Uptown Bookstore. Poetry readings, book clubs.
Amsterdam Avenue?
Yeah, 157th in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Technically not Harlem, but they serve.
No, that's Washington Heights.
Yeah, Washington. Technically,
155th.
it's 2 blocks north. But these are our brothers and sisters as well, and this bookstore serves Harlem.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of
Yeah,
folks.
it's
Now that we
Harlem.
only have one, predominantly African American bookstore, Sister Jennifer Wilson and her team, they're getting that job done up there. So these are great efforts. Folks need to know about them, and Total Liquid now is happy to connect some of those dots.
She's been up there for years.
Oh yeah, she's a powerhouse.
Yeah.
And that's if you haven't visited, make sure I'm sure both of you have been there. But they're doing some great work up there. It's a wonderful, warm space, very inviting, and the staff is just wonderful as well. So.
The literacy as a whole, when we were growing up, it wasn't a question about learning to read and reading books. My grandfather, my patrilineal grandfather, never learned to read or write. Never learned to read or write. So I'm 2 generations away from total illiteracy. And I remember growing up, my mother's middle name was, "You got nothing to do, go read a book."
Okay.
That was
birth certificate.
That was
what
it.
said.
Nothing to do, go read a book. And coming up, you mentioned the English. People learning English. They used to teach English in schools at night. So immigrants could come, go to the public school at night. They don't have any evening programs in the schools anymore.
Really?
There are far fewer. I know there are a very small handful of schools, but really it's not the way.
But not the way. Years ago, because my mother worked for the Board of Ed, and all the schools in our district were open at night. So parents could go, immigrant parents could go and learn to read and write English. It's a serious problem. When I was in the police department, I encountered people that have been here 10, 15 years and don't speak the language and can't read English. And when there's an emergency,
that's a real
can't communicate.
Oh, sure,
And I'm not just talking about Latinos. I've worked in Queens with Asians who've been here 15 years. Don't speak the language. They feel safe in the community, but when there's a crisis, when there's a critical situation, we had to get an interpreter.
And that's powerful. What you say, your grandmother you were mentioning. Or your grandfather, I'm sorry. So I just remember something that my grandmother said. My grandmother lives in St. Louis now, migrated up from the deep south, from Mississippi, below Jackson, in the early 50s to provide my father and his siblings a better opportunity and to find more employment opportunities. She told me something I'll never forget. And whenever I speak to young people or other folks in the community, I always try to remember to let them know. My grandmother said, they can take anything from you, right? And that's they mean it doesn't, anyone, right? They can take the clothes on your back. They can take, if you wear jewelry, they can take your house, etc. They can never take what's up here.
That's right.
My grand, and I'll never forget that because that's a woman who she went to segregated schools in the deep south. She tells me stories about how they had to receive the secondhand books that the white school down the road, when they would discard the books and they give them to the black school. When they had to walk to their school, to the black school in the town, when the other kids get to ride on the bus. And so, these things are really ingrained, and I appreciate that. We need to know our history. And you speaking your history, you telling your history, and me telling my history, and Brother Winston telling his story. We need to share these stories because young people and I think older folks alike, sometimes we need a reminder about how far we've come and yet how far we have to go and what folks have fought for, right, to get where we are. Because we have we got to struggle for more opportunities, but there are certain things that we can do within our community as individuals, collectively, working intergenerationally to provide a more reading opportunity. So I thank you for bringing that up because
thank you. Thank you.
This is excellent. This is what we need in our community. Well, tell us more about what you're doing with the kids.
Sure.
Anything else?
Yeah. Well, another thing, a lot of our programs are intergenerational. We piloted a program last year.
That's important.
Yes, and so often we're, the young.
How old are you?
I'll be 35 in a couple weeks, actually.
So, 35.
Yeah.
I'm double your age.
Younger than my son. At least my oldest son. Yes, younger.
And I thank God for that. It's a blessing.
Yeah, amen.
It's a blessing. Every day you get up is a blessing.
Yes.
But one of the other programs we run is education film screening and community discussion series.
Say that again?
Yeah, it's a mouthful. I know, we need to whittle that down. Yeah. Education film screening.
Film screening?
Film screening.
Okay.
And community discussion series. So every month, actually, we're just starting a new fall series coming up next month, and we have a great program focused on math education.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's a hot topic these days. So
yeah, big time.
Every month, bring folks together, from our teenagers in local schools to our elders, everyone in between, educators, parents, folks who may not have any direct connection with the school system. And we show a film, usually a documentary on a different topic. Okay. And then we engage folks in a very democratic discussion. We break up into small groups and ask folks to come up with questions based on the theme of the film, which they impose to a panel. And we don't spend a whole lot of time on the panel. We try to keep, we realize that everyone in the room has a certain level of expertise in the area, whether it be culturally relevant pedagogy or culturally relevant instruction, whether it be nutritional education, healthy eating. There are a range of topics, so we try to make it accessible for folks.
Have you a place where you do this?
We do. We do it at AME Zion Church on the Hill, Pastor DeForest Raphael.
You have room for another program at the Boys and Girls Club?
Actually, we can travel. Let me talk to my partners, because this is actually something we do in partnership with Community League of the Heights, which is a multi-service social service agency serving West Harlem and Washington Heights, and with the Pastor DeForest Raphael and AME Zion Church on the Hill. So I have to go back to them. I can't make decisions unilaterally. But I'm sure they would welcome the opportunity to travel a little bit, right, and work with other partners and meet other audiences.
So just sit down and talk to Shirley. But we need an executive director also for the Boys and Girls Club.
And I'm spreading the word. I've agreed to spread the word, and you can hold me to that. So
I'll get the qualifications that we need. And, this is exciting, because I have every reason to believe there's no reason why we can't move an M&M or have a small outlet for M&M uptown, Manhattanville.
Love to see
So the thugs have something else to look at, look at themselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, so everyone, hopefully we can engage a range of folks. I'd be happy to, help you think through that. If you need assuming you need my help, if there's something I can do, I'm happy to support you.
That's why you're here.
So, yeah.
Do you do any work in conjunction with the public schools during the day in terms of the literacy?
Yeah, I've done it. A lot of the work that we've done, I've done as an individual with some of my interns. I have a wonderful intern who designed the flyer that a lot of people probably saw for the Literacy Across Harlem Day March. Okay. Sharnae Betton, who's now a junior at City College.
So how young?
City College.
How young? Right down the block.
How young?
She is, that's a good idea. She's probably, I guess, 19 or 20. Okay. But she's also very passionate about literacy and is contributing artistic talents to this endeavor. So one of the things that I did about a year ago is partnered with school, Wadley Secondary School for their Performing and Visual Arts, 114th Street. Yeah. And we co-taught with a couple of the teachers there a 2-month session on community problem solving. So that's one of the other things that Total Equity Now does, is we run a program called Conscious Gear Expo that was founded with a couple of other Harlemites several years ago. And what we do is we walk young people through identifying pressing community issues. They narrow it down to one. What are they most concerned? What do they see on a daily basis? Identify a few potential solutions to that issue. This is all coming from the young people. We don't tell them focus on crime or focus on littering or whatever. They come up with the issues.
Let them bring the problem to you.
Yeah, problem solutions. They identify community partners. They identify or they come up with a socially conscious slogan or phrase, which we iron on a T-shirt. Okay. At the end of the session, they hold up their T-shirt and they present it to their peers and to other folks in the room and explain why they chose that issue, what steps they're going to take to advance that cause, and what change they hope will come with them wearing their T-shirt around the community. Because, the same way you see someone with a name brand, this or that, right? That attracts attention. So what we're asking the young people to do is to wear their consciousness on their sleeve, so that sparks conversations among community members, right? So they come provocative slogans about whatever it might be. Folks see that on the street, and the idea is you'll stop and talk to them, ask you, what is that about? Why are you concerned about that issue? And our young people are leaders, right? We always say, often, we're guilty of saying they're the leaders of tomorrow. And they are. They are the leaders of tomorrow, but they're also the leaders of today.
Amen.
And that's the heart of Total Equity Now's work with all of our community members is we don't have to wait for the next generation to come.
No.
There is work that they can be doing and that many of them are doing today in our community, and we need to recognize their leadership, ability, potential, and their track record. You know, we're wasting an opportunity when we don't tap into our young people as leaders.
Amen.
So this is some of the things that Total Equity Now does to help them not even build their leadership capacity, but help them recognize that within themselves. Right? It's one thing to say, I'm going to build your capacity. That suggests that they don't have the capacity. Joe Rogers or Total Equity Now or any of us are going to come in and help build them up. And there's some guidance we need to provide and role modeling. But I believe that each of us, whether we're a younger person or older person, we have that leadership ability. Sometimes we just need folks to help us recognize what's already inside of us so that we can express it and put it to good use for the good of our community.
This is exciting. I mean, God puts people in your path. We've been talking about how long now.
I could testify. I could testify to that.
We've been talking for the longest time. Yeah. And I ran into him he goes to my church, right? Yeah. And we ran into each other this Sunday. And I said, wait a minute, come on, Joe. I want you to get involved with the club. And we finally talked, and here you are.
Here we are, yeah.
That's what happens.
Just the fact that you're dealing with literacy, I saw a commercial today. It said 3 out of 10 students will not finish high school.
Yeah.
10?
3 out of 10.
3 out of 10.
Will not finish high school. I don't know what the figure is for New York. That's nationally.
Sure.
But that is a great natural resource lost.
Yeah.
When our young people are not finishing at least high school. If 30% of the population is uneducated, how well can a nation progress?
The jobs go overseas.
And there are sharp minds out there.
Yeah.
These young folks have sharp minds.
Thousands of them.
And they need some guidance. You get the guidance in the direction, and they can go. But when you have 30%, that's a high figure. 30%. If it was maybe 2 or 3, but 30%, and then of that 30, what percentage of that 30 are children of color who are not completing school, especially here in the New York City
Isn't
area?
it especially high in the Harlem community? More like 50%?
It's high across the city.
Yeah, and if you can break it down, and we could talk stats, and people will quibble about which stats are correct. Or, you gotta love stats. But some people suggest that at least the rates of our Black and Latino men, graduation rates hover around 25% or so.
Very low.
So depending on where you are, and that's not necessarily true all over the community, but that may be true in certain pockets.
You mean 25% graduate?
In 4 years. Yeah.
25% of them graduate.
Graduate in 4 years. In some of
25%.
25%, yeah. And so roughly,
I was shooting for 50.
Yeah, ideally, I think the rate, it depends on who you talk to about stats. New York City wide, it hovers around 60-ish. It depends on who you believe and which stats you're looking at.
Oh man, that's
But for Black and Latino men in some of the most just quote unquote distressed parts of our communities, in the lowest income communities, you're looking at around about a quarter or so of our, and we're talking about these are folks who are graduating. Look at what are our skill levels when we're leaving. So
that's another thing, because the quality of education
what are they learning
in New York City is not where it was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
What are they trying to teach
The
them?
kids don't have the writing skills. They don't have the reading skills. And I've seen it.
Or the attention.
In and out of the city university and the private colleges, when I'm speaking and whatnot, it's not there. So there's a lot lacking. And students need to understand, and parents need to understand, it's not sufficient to go to school and come home and say you went to school.
Yeah.
What you're getting there is just the tertiary material. You now have to go after school and dig deep, study and read on your own to get what you're not getting, just to come up to par.
Yeah.
Because our kids have to understand, they have to compete against kids. You're not, unless you want to live in the same neighborhood for the rest of your life, you're going to be competing with people from across the country and around the world. And education there is not a joke. See, and the standards are higher. Don't believe what you're hearing from Bloomberg and all that. Nah, it's not there. You have students who are not even being given core classes because the administration doesn't feel that they can do it. So they're not even challenging certain students to take chemistry. They're not even offering it. They're not telling them it's a required subject. The attitude of the Board of Ed is, well, they're not smart enough, so don't even give it to them.
You know, one of the other hats I wear, Total Equity Now is a completely volunteer-run, volunteer-driven organization. So I'm not compensated. None of the volunteers are compensated, interns, etc. So one of the other hats I wear, I won't go into a lot of detail because I'm not necessarily wearing that hat today, but one of the hats I wear is as a researcher at Teachers College, Columbia University. And that's, you know, I want to talk to you a little bit more about that because that's one of the things we're looking at right now is the resources available in 8 resource categories to young people in high-need schools and high-need communities around the state, including New York City. And so a lot of what you're saying is rings true, right? So you know it. I mean, you know it firsthand from talking to folks and spending time in the schools and what have you. But also, you know, we've been talking to schools upon schools upon schools, including and some, you know, side conversations, not necessarily in the research project, but getting additional input from young people and teachers and parents and principals, et cetera, et cetera. And that's actually true. There's a report you can read. I'll maybe plug it next time I'm on if you'd have me back again.
Sure. Next week.
Next week, yeah.
We're going to do more.
But it's coming out, and there's going to be a report coming out most likely toward the end of November that's going to demonstrate, right, and show that we're not making this stuff up, the kinds of things in terms of course offerings that you're talking about, and whether the kids, especially our young people, rather, in our lowest income schools, have access to the full range of courses. And we're not just talking about core. I mean, core is important, but I mean, we're on the same page about all the other things, you know, in terms of arts. It's great to have some video production class.
Of course.
Have USC come in, and that would be so powerful. But can our schools afford to do that? And are the resources available to do?
I got the cameras.
The money is there.
Volunteer it, okay? We can put it in there.
All right. You heard it here.
That's it. No, that's. I think everybody should learn TV production. I mean, this is an eye-opener to yourself, medium. To your own mindset. And especially for kids, if you want to learn your own internal.
It draws them in.
You know,
it draws them in. I couldn't understand why I was doing a lecture to students who never had algebra, and they're in the city university. How do you get out of high school when you haven't had algebra?
Right.
This whole Bloomberg scenario was a fraud.
Wow.
It was explained to me. You can take algebra 5 times and fail it 5 times, and you will get credit for having taken the course, even though you've failed it.
But that's essential.
So you meet your math requirement, although you failed the same subject 3, 4, or 5 times.
I'd like to hear more from you about that, if you know where that's happening.
And it's happening all across the city, especially with our children. And then they go to Bloomberg University, which is a city university, because they can't get into better schools. And up the city university, you can't get into Lehman, you're not getting into Hunter, you're not getting into Brooklyn, and you haven't had those core classes.
No knock on City College, City University.
You know, CCNY is my school.
Yes.
But you cannot move forward. You're not even a matriculated student. And they're drawing down on their grants to take remedial courses that they should have had in high school. So parents need to understand, because your child graduated from high school, it doesn't mean the diploma is worth anything.
Really? Amazing.
In this New York City school system. And they've done away with the academic diploma, and they've got certificates now they give students which are garbage, which are useless. You can't get into a school of higher education with a certificate. And students need to understand, parents need to be actively involved in their child's education. Parents need to be reading.
And the good thing is, and I know you'll agree with this because you see this as well, is the challenges sometimes seem insurmountable. Right, we have a lot of work to do in Harlem and other communities. But what inspires me and keeps me going, keeps me optimistic. I'm so optimistic because we see these examples of young people, of parents, of teachers, of other folks who are involved with it. Maybe it's after-school programs who are getting the job done, right? We see young people who are excelling, right? And we see this in our very community. The problem is, in many cases, that not enough of our young people have the level of support they need to succeed.
Right.
But we do have some examples. We know that it's possible, but because we have community members, Harlemites and other folks who are excelling. And if we could only provide the same high-level services, opportunities, resources, and personal support, I believe everyone across our village, every single young person, every single adult who's trying to improve their reading and writing skills can succeed. It's a matter of, as he suggested, there's some policy things we need to do, right, in terms of securing resources, making sure the policies are supportive of our efforts. But we also need to do what we can do personally and individually. And that's another thing that we don't always like to talk about, right? Sometimes there are problems with the system, and I'm one of the first people, I'm right with you in calling them out, because we need to do that as well. But there's so many times, so many untapped resources within us, within our community. There are brothers. There are brothers who could be mentoring. Right? There are many brothers. Let me stress this, because I always sometimes I get myself in trouble. But I always like to stress the strengths first. There are brothers in Harlem who are mentoring and doing a great job, day in, day out, week after week, carving out time of their TV schedule and their social schedule, and playing whatever they play and their work schedule, and they're making it happen for our young men and for our young women as well. The same thing. There are sisters who are doing that, right, across our community. The challenge for us is that we need to get more folks doing what these folks are doing, right? So yes, let's address the policy issues, but let's also make sure that we as Harlemites, we as members of other communities, especially lower income communities of color, are doing what we can, are leveraging our personal resources to provide the support. There are parents who are getting their job done. But what can we learn from those parents, right? How can we replicate the successes of those parents? So it's not all doomsday, right? Because we all see, Grant Winston, you see it, Brother Graham, you see it, right? We see these sparks of hope. We just need to make sure that more folks are involved and that more folks have the opportunities that many of us have benefited from.
But see, you're blessed, Joe. You have to understand how blessed you are. I mean, you don't see it because you're surrounded by it. And you've got a Christian heart, too. So you just, God's going to guide you all kind of places. He was on the podium, not the podium, but the pulpit Sunday. So you're just growing in the church and growing in your life. That's what happens. You have God in your life.
I'm blessed. And what we have to be careful of, and I gave us a talk on this at Hunter College I think it was about a week ago. And I devoted probably a third of my talk to this syndrome that I call, it's a disease. I call it the exceptional black male syndrome. What's that? This is a syndrome. You may not find it in your medical journals. Your doctor may not be able to spot it right away.
We promote that here. We promote that here.
You promote exceptional black male syndrome, yeah. But that's a problem. That's another thing we need to check ourselves. And I think, I try to do that on a regular basis. I try to, remind other folks that we're all in the same boat here. Is that if you are doing something, you are blessed, and we all are blessed, I believe.
Course, yeah.
But if you are doing something positive or a little bit different, or some would say quote unquote exceptional, folks they want to attribute that to you as the individual sometimes, right? Sometimes they want to say, oh, that's because you were born this way. You're so smart. You speak so well.
Articulate.
You're so articulate.
I hate that.
That's a whole show, probably, I'm sure. But we get so caught up in this because we come to believe, because people tell us that we're exceptional. And we forget that the reason why we're here today is because for those who believe in God, God has blessed us with these opportunities. But there have been many people in our lives along the way, whether they were teachers, whether they were parents, whether they were mentors, whether they were social workers. I had a wonderful social worker who's now become a lifelong friend of mine, who supported me around, getting ready for college and filling out college applications. I lived in a group home at one time when I was in high school.
Okay.
I had a place to go when things weren't going so well, things weren't working. We had some struggles.
But it worked out positively.
It worked out positively in the end because we had a place to go.
So many group homes turn out negative.
I've heard that. Yeah, I've known some people from some other homes. I was blessed. I was very fortunate.
You tried ACS group home, and was that the case in yours?
No. It wasn't ACS. It was a independent.
He's
independent place, and I was fortunate. But that,
you're blessed again.
Yeah, so that's another issue: education,
of course.
Social services and foster care and group homes. I know some folks.
That's why you're giving back. See?
Yeah, that is so true. That is the truth. That's the reason why I do what I do today, because as you said before, we're wasting potential.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many young people who have just as much, if not more, potential than I had as a young person, but they don't have the same opportunities that I had.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason I'm here today.
That's
because I was blessed with those opportunities. So that's why I try to tell people it's not about me. It's not about me and me being so exceptional and what have you. It's about these services. And if we could only provide the same opportunity for the other young people, we'll have folks who will surpass Joe Rogers, surpass Brother Graham, surpass Brother Winston by miles.
See, God brings a certain humility into your life that you have to accept these things.
I got to work on it, dog. I got to check myself.
We all have to. You kidding? Yeah. The older I get, the more I have to work on it. Because the devil's always busy.
And two fellas stopped me out in Jamaica a few months ago. Oh, you're the brother from the TV show. Hey, how you doing? You with 100 Blacks? I said, yeah, I was with them. He said, man, you need to come out here and hold it. I don't need to come out here and do anything. I do enough moving around. What are you doing?
That's it.
I can't be in 1,000 places, but 1,000 people can be in 1,000 places. I appreciate that you appreciate, but it's not about me. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
If you perceive what I have said is correct, then you repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
Go and research and determine if what I'm saying is correct. I tell students all the time, you need to challenge every professor standing in front of you.
Yep.
Schools are not for education. They're for the perpetuation of the status quo and the system that is oppressing yourself and the people that look like you.
Too often.
You need to challenge 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 2 is 4. You need to challenge everything. And don't just take my word because I'm standing before you.
Critical thinking.
I'm getting paid at times to stand before you.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm not. But what is the intent of the person standing before you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is the teacher telling you, oh, you're stupid, you'll never be anything, you'll never amount to anything? And I've had students tell me that that's what the teachers tell them.
Yeah. Brother Malcolm, remember that?
Absolutely.
What did that teacher say to Brother Malcolm?
Hey.
Remember that back in the day? He said, Brother Malcolm, Brother Malcolm X, as I remember reading that in high school, that he said, and don't get, forgive me if I get the quote wrong, but he said something about how he wanted to be a lawyer, I believe. And the teacher said, Malcolm, that's all right, let me just tell you, he said, that's great, but that's not a profession for an N-word. I know your policy is an N-word, so I'm not going to use it here, but he said, why don't you, that's not a good profession, that's not a good profession for an N-word. Why don't you try Negro? There you go. All right, that's not the word, but
back in my day, when I was coming up, I told my father I wanted to go to college. He said, you'd be better if you went and got a trade.
Yeah.
But this is the 50s.
Oh, sure. And there's nothing wrong with doing something with your hands.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that we also need to, check, sometimes check ourselves about that as well, because sometimes we look down on, we instill that in our young people, look down on, tradespeople or folks, and these people are providing valuable services. These are powerhouses, and we need to expose our young people to a full range of career options, and we're all in this.
College is not a necessity. I tell students you can make good money without going to college, and you don't have to hustle on the corner.
Yeah,
that's it. We need more trade schools in Harlem.
We could definitely use some. I want to piggyback on what you were saying about when you stand up before people, and I know you give speeches all the time, and folks will ask you, what can you do, where they'll sort of give you praise for the great work you're doing. But one thing, Dr. Adelaide Sanford, I know you know
that's
Dr.
That's my second.
Everyone knows Dr. I hope if you're watching
out there, you don't know,
look up Dr. Adelaide Sanford, powerful woman. I remember
if she was chancellor, we would have a problem.
That would be a different world. That would be a different world, I believe. But she said something. I remember the first time I heard her speak. I just said, the thought that occurred to me, I said, she's the queen of education.
Yes.
I think it's not inappropriate for a
No, that's-
religious
that's
man.
correct.
I think actually thought sort of goddess of education.
Yes.
Maybe that's an inappropriate,
Whatever.
respect to
No,
God.
taken
But that was the
properly.
first
Whatever.
idea that came to mind. But one of the things that she said, I can't remember if it was that speech or another one. She said, just like you were saying, Brother Graham, she said, now you all are celebrating me. I think it was at the Dr. Ali Sanford conference they have over at Medgar Evers.
Okay.
And she said, you all are celebrating me, but you all need to stop praising me, because if you all put you put the spotlight on me, then it lets you all off the hook,
Right.
There you
if
go.
I'm the one who's supposed to be responsible for saving the community,
there you go.
then you all can just sit back. She said, she said, we're in this together.
See,
So,
humility.
we can celebrate, learn what you can from me, but remember that, this isn't my job. We all have to play our role. And so
Just
that
an
was so
example.
wise. I
Right.
mean, that woman is just,
Everybody
she's
watch,
phenomenal.
stay in your lane.
There you go.
Whatever what purpose God has for you,
Yeah.
it will be revealed.
Fulfilling the purpose.
Well, you're past your time.
Yeah, I do have to jet. Can I make a quick plug?
Sure.